Widely regarded as one of the most respected and largest collections of artifacts in the world, the Smithsonian Collection of Museums centers on all aspects of American history. With over 151 million items spread across 21 museums, artifacts include a copy of the Declaration of Independence, a pair of ruby slippers, screen worn by Judy Garland, and even a space shuttle. But within the treasures in the Museum of American History, sitting pride of place, sits the locomotive John Bull, one of the first engines America would preserve. It's 1830, and the American East Coast was growing fast. So fast that other cities and suburbs grew around it. Being on the shoreline, Philadelphia, Camden and Cape May were perfectly situated for importing and exporting goods, especially as the Delaware Bay provided a natural harbour. These would be instrumental for the city of New York, and it was one of the first considered for new transport links. Wanting to push the success of the railways of the UK and Europe, it was decided that the best solution was a railway line, and commissioned two companies, that being the Camden and Amboy and the Delaware and Raritan Canal Company, to build and eventually run it. The two companies accepted. However, rather than merging to make one new company, they chose to run a new company together, all the while keeping their independence, becoming the primary transporter of the area. The line was set a few inches wider than standard gauge at 4 foot 10 inches and was made using imported T-rails from England. This, though, wasn't the only import. Accompanying the rails was a locomotive. It was constructed in Newcastle at the Robert Stephenson and Company. Constructed around the same time as Rocket, the two engines could not look anything different. Once built and tested, it was dismantled and packed into crates for its journey. On its arrival, it was up to railroad engineer Isaac Drips to put it back together again. The only thing is, there was no instructions, and like an IKEA flat pack, things were left over, but it ran. And in 1831, the engine was giving rise to the Gentry on its very own test track. The locomotive was ready, but the railroad still needed work, so it was placed into store. A couple of years later, everything was complete, and to much fanfare, the engine was christened Stevens, after the railroad's president, Robert L. Stevens. But the crews nicknamed the engine John Bull, after a popular cartoon character, personification of England itself, and in the end the name stuck. The rails, though, did not suit the locomotive, and John Bull had a tendency to derail. To help, a leading pony truck was added. A cab was installed to protect the crews from the heat and the rain. A cowcatcher was added to protect the engines from debris and animals on the track. A bell for alerting people to the engine, a light for working in tunnels or at night, and a spark arrestor for the chimney. The pony truck, though, interfered with the driving motion, so the coupling rods were removed and the engine was rear-wheel driven. The company really made the engine its own, and it took on a whole new style. As the railroads made progress with stronger and larger engines, the use of John Bull became less and less, until it spent the last of its working life in the switching yards, and later a stationary engine. It was officially withdrawn in 1866, and it was decided to store the engine away. The engine sat idle for 5 years, and in that time its railroad had merged with not one, but two companies, and was now a part of the Pennsylvania Railroad. Rediscovering the engine, the railroad saw a golden opportunity and restored it cosmetically. They used it as a promotional tool at several exhibitions, but the open road was rough on the old engine, and it was clear that John Bull needed a permanent home. The engine wasn't the only one needing a change of career. Its caretaker and engineer, Elfrith Watkins, had been injured on the rails, and following the loss of his leg, was demoted to clerk. At the same time, the Smithsonian Institute was looking to expand its own collection, especially its technology department. Both engine and engineer were perfect for its new exhibit, and both made the move. John Bull became the Smithsonian's largest exhibit at the time, while Watkins became its first expert curator, perfectly suited to look after it. Although the engine had a new home, it was still considered the property of the railroad and could be called upon when needed. In 1893, the railroad wanted to run the engine from New Jersey to Chicago to showcase its progress. The procession would take the rich and the famous, and even the president. It would be the furthest the engine would ever travel. John Bull went through a radical overhaul to prepare it for the journey, which was supervised by the chief engineer himself. It took several days and several pilot drivers, but she made it with little fuss. It was used in the centenary of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, where it was steamed for the last time. Although not in steam, the engine still had an active life. Its tender was replaced in 1930, and in 1931, to celebrate its 100th birthday, it was put on jacks and compressed air was pushed through the cylinders to move the wheels. After its birthday and a brief stint outside, it was decided to conserve the engine properly, and for 25 years it remained on display. That is until 1981. Its 150th birthday was approaching, and the Smithsonian wanted to do something special. They inspected the engine from frame to frame and found it to be perfect for its age. Its wheels were in good shape and the pistons showed little wear. It was so good that it got the curators thinking, could it handle a steam up? They brought in experts, and other than a few flaws which were small, it could, but at reduced £50 per square inch. It only took a few months to ready the engine, and on the 15th of September 1981, she travelled under her own power again, breaking the record of the oldest operating steam vehicle in the world, a record she still holds today. In 1985, she took a very rare journey for an exhibition in Texas and became a second record holder of the oldest locomotive to travel by plane. After returning home to the National Museum of American History, it's likely her roving days are done, with no plans to steam her in the future. But you can never say never with this engine, and with her 200th birthday around the corner, John Bull may surprise us yet again.